What if your procrastination isn't laziness, but an old wound trying to protect you? Think about that for a second. How many times in your life have you looked at yourself with disappointment, muttering under your breath, "I'm so lazy, I can't stay disciplined. I'll never get it together." In America, procrastination has become almost a cultural sin. We treat it as proof of weakness, lack of self-control, or even moral failure. You scroll through social media and every productivity guru screams at you. Wake up earlier, build discipline, stop being weak. And yet, even after reading those books, watching those videos, downloading those apps, you still find yourself stuck. Why? Because maybe the problem isn't discipline at all. Maybe procrastination is not your enemy, but your body's way of protecting you from something you haven't faced. What if every time you put something off, it isn't laziness, but a survival response? The echo of an old fear, an old criticism, an old memory that told you it wasn't safe to try? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if procrastination is just that? The unconscious directing your life, disguising fear as delay, shame as distraction, trauma as laziness? This isn't about excusing yourself. It's about looking deeper. When you delay sending that email, starting that project, finishing that paper, maybe what you're really avoiding isn't the task itself, but the pain connected to it, the fear of failure, the memory of being humiliated for not being good enough. The voice of a parent, a teacher, or even society whispers, "You'll never measure up." So ask yourself again, is procrastination really laziness? Or is it the scar of an old wound? A wound that has been quietly shaping your life while you blamed yourself for being weak? If you've ever felt trapped in this cycle, this video may be the mirror you've been avoiding. And once you see the truth, you'll never look at procrastination or yourself the same way again. Before we dive deeper, take just 1 second. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be the very first to know when I share the next video that could shift. Picture this. It's 11:45 p.m. in a dorm room at a university in the United States. A student sits in front of their laptop. The essay is due at midnight. They've known about it for weeks. They've promised themselves every day, "Tonight I'll finally start." And yet here they are, scrolling TikTok, watching videos on YouTube, refreshing Instagram, convincing themselves, just 5 more minutes. The cursor blinks on a blank Word document. Each blink feels like a pulse of shame. The student whispers, "I'm so lazy. Why can't I just do it? What's wrong with me?" Their chest tightens, their stomach sinks, and instead of writing, they slam the laptop shut. The guilt becomes unbearable, but the task remains untouched. If you've ever been in this situation, whether as a student, an employee with deadlines, or simply someone with dreams you keep postponing, you know that sinking feeling. You know the silent war between the part of you that wants to act and the part of you that paralyzes you. And if you're like most people, you've called yourself names: lazy, useless, undisciplined. But let's pause here. What if I told you that in this moment, the student isn't lazy at all? What if their brain is actually protecting them? Neuroscience and trauma research reveal that procrastination often isn't about time management, but about pain management. Think about it. Every time this student stares at the essay, something inside them stirs: anxiety, fear, self-doubt. Maybe when they were younger, they were harshly criticized for every mistake. Maybe they grew up hearing, "You'll never be good enough." So now, when they face a new challenge, their nervous system remembers. It recognizes the essay not as a neutral assignment, but as a potential source of humiliation. The body whispers, "If you try and fail, you'll be shamed again. You'll prove you're worthless." So what does the brain do? It delays, it distracts. It pulls you toward TikTok, YouTube, anything that keeps you away from the source of danger. This isn't weakness, it's survival. It's the nervous system saying, "Let's stay safe." And here lies the cruel paradox. Procrastination feels like self-sabotage, but it's actually self-protection. The student isn't avoiding the work. They're avoiding the emotional wound that the work threatens to reopen. Now, why does this matter? Because this story is not just about one student. It's about millions of people. It's about you, sitting with that project you've delayed for months. It's about the employee who keeps pushing off an important email. It's about the artist who never starts the painting. On the surface, it looks like laziness. But beneath it, it's often trauma, unhealed memories shaping present behavior. Carl Jung would call this the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that influence us without our awareness. The student's procrastination is not random. It's a shadow response, a memory stored in the unconscious, activated by the simple act of opening a laptop. Until that shadow is faced, procrastination will repeat itself endlessly. This is why telling people to just be disciplined or just try harder doesn't work. You can't out-discipline trauma. You can't bully the nervous system into feeling safe. Imagine telling that student, "Stop being lazy, just write." Do you think they haven't tried that? Do you think they haven't shamed themselves enough already? The truth is, the shame is part of the trap. Every time you call yourself lazy, the wound deepens. The brain hears the insult and doubles down on its survival strategy: avoid, delay, distract. And so the cycle repeats. Procrastination, guilt, shame, and more procrastination. But what if instead of blaming yourself, you paused and asked, what am I really afraid of right now? Maybe it's not the essay itself, but the memory of a teacher who once told you you'd never succeed. Maybe it's not the project, but the fear of confirming that deep down, you don't feel worthy. When you see procrastination through this lens, it changes everything. Suddenly, it's not a moral failure. It's a trauma response. It's your body trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. Let's go back to our student. Imagine if instead of closing the laptop in shame, they took a deep breath and whispered to themselves, "I'm not lazy, I'm scared, and that's okay." Imagine if instead of pushing themselves with anger, they approached the task with compassion, acknowledging that the fear comes from old wounds, not from weakness. That small shift could break the cycle. Because when you recognize procrastination as protection, you can start working with it instead of against it. You can soothe the fear, reassure the nervous system, and slowly teach yourself that it's safe to act. And isn't that the truth we've been missing? That procrastination is not the enemy, but a messenger. It's not here to ruin your life, but to show you where you're still hurting. And if you listen carefully, it can point you to the exact place where healing needs to begin. So the next time you find yourself stuck, scrolling endlessly, whispering, "I'm useless," remember this story. Remember the student, the blinking cursor, the shame, and the deeper truth beneath it all. Procrastination is not laziness. It's survival. And once you understand that, you'll never look at your own delays the same way again. Carl Jung once warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Procrastination is one of the clearest examples of this truth. On the surface, it looks like a simple bad habit, a delay in action. But if you look deeper, it reveals itself as the shadow at work. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents all the parts of ourselves that we've repressed: fears, insecurities, painful memories, emotions we were taught to hide. These parts don't disappear just because we suppress them. They continue to live in the unconscious, silently guiding our behavior. Procrastination is often the shadow's voice disguised as hesitation. The essay, the project, the conversation you avoid, these tasks awaken something hidden, something unresolved. You may think you're choosing distraction, but in reality, the unconscious is choosing for you. Freud, Jung's teacher and rival, would have called this a defense mechanism. Freud argued that when the psyche encounters something that threatens to overwhelm it with anxiety, it creates strategies to reduce the tension. Some people rationalize, some repress, some deny. Procrastination can be seen as a form of avoidance, a way to postpone the discomfort, to push anxiety into the future. You're not just delaying work, you're delaying the feeling that comes with it. But here's where modern psychology has advanced Freud's and Jung's insights. Researchers like Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Bessel van der Kolk show us that trauma isn't just a memory stored in the mind, it's stored in the body. When a child grows up under constant criticism, neglect, or pressure, the body learns to associate effort with danger. The nervous system becomes hypersensitive. Years later, when that person sits down to complete a task, the body reacts as if it's reliving those old wounds. The heart races, the chest tightens, the brain scrambles for escape. TikTok isn't just entertainment in that moment, it's medicine, a quick way to silence the body's alarm system. That's why procrastination often feels irrational. On paper, you know the task is simple. Just write a few paragraphs, send an email, and start the project. But your body responds as if you're facing a threat. This isn't laziness, it's physiology. It's the trauma response of avoidance. The body saying, stay safe, don't go there, it hurts. And yet, in modern America, this reality is rarely acknowledged. Instead, we live in a culture obsessed with productivity. Hustle culture glorifies waking up at 5 a.m., working 80-hour weeks, and treating exhaustion as a badge of honor. In this system, any delay, any pause, any hesitation is seen as weakness. Procrastination is demonized as proof of laziness, lack of ambition, or poor character. Think about the irony. In a country where millions suffer from untreated trauma, burnout, and anxiety, we shame people for the very coping strategies their nervous systems have created to survive. Instead of compassion, we offer judgment. Instead of asking, what pain are you carrying? We say, try harder. Carl Jung would argue that this societal attitude only strengthens the shadow. The more you deny what's inside you, the more power it gains over you. By labeling procrastination as laziness, we push the real cause, trauma, deeper into the unconscious. And as Jung said, what remains unconscious will direct your life, whether you acknowledge it or not. Freud would add that defense mechanisms aren't inherently bad. They exist to protect us. The problem arises when they become chronic, when avoidance becomes the default. In that case, what once protected you begins to imprison you. Procrastination, left unexamined, becomes not just a delay in tasks but a delay in life itself. This is where the insights of Mate and van der Kolk become crucial. They remind us that healing requires embodiment, reconnecting with the body, listening to what it's trying to say. If procrastination is a trauma response, then overcoming it isn't about discipline hacks or time-blocking techniques. It's about creating safety. It's about gently teaching the nervous system that effort no longer equals danger, that failure no longer means abandonment. Let's connect this to the American workplace. Imagine an employee who delays finishing a presentation. Their manager labels them unmotivated. But what if years earlier, every time they spoke up in class, they were humiliated? What if their nervous system learned to equate visibility with shame? Then their procrastination isn't defiance, it's protection. But in a hustle-driven culture, no one asks. The system demands output, not understanding. This is why so many Americans silently suffer. We've medicalized and moralized procrastination instead of humanizing it. We call it laziness, prescribe productivity hacks, or drown it in caffeine. But very rarely do we stop and ask, what is the unconscious trying to tell me? What is the body holding onto that the mind has ignored? The truth is, procrastination may be the psyche's way of begging you to slow down and heal. It's not a sign that you're weak, but that there's a part of you still in pain. And ignoring it in the name of discipline only deepens the wound. So the next time you find yourself stuck, remember Jung's warning. Remember Freud's defense mechanisms. Remember Mate and van der Kolk's research. Procrastination isn't a flaw in your character. It's a message from your unconscious and your body. The question isn't, how do I stop being lazy? The real question is, what part of me is still hurting, and how can I bring it into the light? Because only then, when the unconscious becomes conscious, when the body is heard instead of silenced, can procrastination stop being a prison and start becoming a teacher. Imagine a child growing up in a household where every effort was met not with encouragement, but with criticism. They'd bring home a drawing from school, proud of the colors they used, but instead of hearing, "That's beautiful," they hear, "Why didn't you color inside the lines?" They try out for sports, but instead of, "I'm proud of you for trying," they hear, "You'll never be good enough." Slowly the message sinks in. Effort is dangerous. Showing up is unsafe. Now fast forward to adulthood. That child has grown into an employee, a student, maybe even a parent. They sit down to begin a project, a report for work, a paper for school, or simply a personal goal they've long wanted to pursue. But the moment they start, their nervous system activates an old recording. Their mind flashes back, not consciously, but unconsciously, to the voice of judgment, the sting of humiliation. And instead of writing, they scroll. Instead of acting, they delay. To the outside world, it looks like laziness. To the inner world, it feels like survival. This is the hidden truth about procrastination. It's rarely about not caring. In fact, the cruel irony is that procrastination often happens because you care too much. You want it to be good. You want to prove yourself. You want it to finally silence the voices of doubt. But the weight of those expectations is unbearable. So the brain takes the safer path: delay. Think about it. How many times have you postponed a task, not because you didn't want to do it, but because you cared so deeply that the idea of failing felt unbearable? How many times have you stared at a blank page, not out of apathy, but out of fear that whatever you write will never be enough? This isn't theory, it's daily reality for millions. Consider the modern workplace. An employee gets an email from their boss requesting a proposal. Immediately, the memory of past criticism surfaces. This isn't good enough. The body tenses. Instead of beginning right away, they check Slack, browse LinkedIn, and refresh their inbox. The proposal isn't avoided because they don't care about their job. It's avoided because deep down, they care so much that the thought of rejection feels like a threat to their very identity. Or think about relationships. Someone knows they need to have a difficult conversation with their partner, but they delay. They avoid. They distract themselves with work, with screens, with anything but the talk. Why? Because past experiences have taught them that vulnerability can lead to rejection, and rejection equals pain. The procrastination in this case isn't laziness. It's a protective shield against emotional wounding. And here's where the modern world intensifies the problem. We live in a society that celebrates constant performance. In school, students are graded not just on what they learn, but how fast they can produce. In jobs, employees are evaluated by deadlines, metrics, and output. Social media amplifies it even further, turning life itself into a stage where every action is visible, every mistake permanent. In such a culture, is it any wonder that people hesitate? That people delay? Carl Jung would remind us that what we call procrastination is often the shadow expressing itself, the parts of us that were criticized, shamed, or silenced long ago, now acting out in subtle ways. And Gabor Mate would add that what looks like self-sabotage is really self-protection, the nervous system avoiding the pain it once endured. But here's the awakening insight. Recognizing this pattern doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Avoidance is not proof of indifference, it is proof of sensitivity. It shows that somewhere in your history, effort was tied to pain, visibility was tied to danger, and failure was tied to rejection. So when you catch yourself delaying, try reframing the moment. Instead of asking, "Why am I so lazy?" ask, "What am I protecting myself from right now?" That question opens the door to compassion, and compassion breaks the cycle of shame. Because shame fuels procrastination. The more you call yourself useless, The more your nervous system recoils, the more you avoid. Compassion interrupts that loop. And this isn't just abstract advice. Studies in psychology confirm that self-compassion, not self-criticism, predicts greater resilience, productivity, and emotional well-being. When you treat procrastination not as a flaw but as a messenger, you give yourself space to breathe, to understand, and to gently move forward. So think back. How many times in your life did you delay not because you didn't care, but because you cared so deeply it hurt? How many unfinished projects, unsent emails, and unspoken conversations are really scars from old wounds? Procrastination isn't proof of weakness, it's proof of survival. And once you see it for what it is, you can finally begin to heal the wound beneath the delay. For most of your life, you've probably responded to procrastination with self-criticism. You've called yourself lazy, weak, and undisciplined. But here's the truth. Shame doesn't move you forward, it keeps you stuck. The harder you punish yourself, the stronger the cycle becomes. So what if, instead of scolding yourself, you asked a different question? Instead of, why am I so lazy? Ask, what pain am I avoiding right now? That one shift changes everything. Suddenly, procrastination is no longer a personal flaw but a signal. It's your unconscious raising its hand, your body whispering, there's something here you don't want to face. When you see procrastination as communication, you open the door to healing. Carl Jung believed that healing begins with awareness, to bring the unconscious into consciousness. So the first step is not to eliminate procrastination, but to notice it without judgment. When you catch yourself scrolling, avoiding, or delaying, pause. Don't attack yourself. Instead, observe. What's the feeling underneath this? Fear of failing? Fear of being judged? Fear of not being enough? This awareness transforms procrastination from an enemy into a teacher. Step 1. Journal in the shadow. One of the most effective tools is journaling. Not the polished kind, not the Dear Diary kind, but raw, unfiltered writing. Sit with the discomfort and let the pen capture it. Write the sentence, I'm avoiding this task because, and keep going. Maybe what spills out is, because I'm afraid it won't be perfect. Because I'm afraid they'll laugh at me. Because I don't believe I'm good enough. By putting the shadow into words, you strip it of its power. Jung argued that what remains unconscious rules us, but what we name becomes manageable. Journaling creates distance between you and the wound. The fear is no longer an invisible chain. It's ink on paper. Step 2. Practicing self-compassion. Dr. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion shows that treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend increases motivation and resilience. When you berate yourself, you activate the body's stress response. When you comfort yourself, you activate the care system, releasing oxytocin and calming the nervous system. So the next time you delay, place your hand on your chest, breathe, and say, it's okay. I'm scared, not lazy. I can take one small step. Notice how different that feels. Instead of drowning in shame, you create safety. And safety is the foundation of action. Step 3. Taking small steps. Often, procrastination feels overwhelming because the task seems too big, too heavy. Break it down. Don't write the entire essay. Write the first sentence. Don't clean the whole apartment. Clear one corner. Action, no matter how small, teaches the body. See, we did it. We survived. It's safe. Over time, the nervous system rewires. Effort stops being associated with danger and starts being associated with relief. Step 4. Seeking deeper healing. For many, procrastination has roots in trauma. If your delays are tied to deep wounds, childhood criticism, emotional neglect, or unresolved pain, therapy can be transformative. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk reminds us, the body keeps the score. Trauma that is not processed is carried in your muscles, your breath, your nervous system. Working with a professional can help you release what journaling and self-compassion alone may not reach. Step 5. Redefining productivity in your life. Finally, question the culture that taught you procrastination equals laziness. The American hustle mentality pushes people to measure worth in output, hours, and metrics. But you are not a machine. Productivity is not your identity. Redefine success not as relentless activity, but as alignment with your authentic self. Sometimes, procrastination isn't even avoidance. It's resistance against a life that doesn't fit your soul. Jung would call this individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Ask yourself, am I procrastinating because I'm scared, or because this path is not mine? That question alone can change the course of your life. At the end of the day, procrastination isn't something to be cured. It's something to be understood. It's a signal, a mirror, a message. Instead of shaming yourself, listen. Instead of running, pause. Because beneath every delay lies an invitation to heal, to grow, to step out of old wounds and into your true self. Your procrastination is not proof of failure. It is proof of survival. And when you meet it with awareness, compassion, and courage, it becomes not a chain that holds you back, but a doorway to freedom. Your procrastination is not proof of laziness. It is proof of survival. For years, maybe decades, you've carried the weight of self-blame, whispering to yourself that something is wrong with you. But what if you've been wrong about yourself all along? What if every delay, every unfinished project, every moment of distraction was never weakness, but the echo of wounds that were never given the chance to heal? This shift in perspective is not just intellectual, it's transformative. Because once you see procrastination for what it truly is, you can finally stop fighting the wrong battle. The enemy has never been laziness. The real struggle is with unacknowledged pain, with unconscious shadows, with a nervous system that learned long ago to protect you through avoidance. And here's the liberating truth. Once you recognize procrastination as a survival strategy, you can meet it with compassion instead of contempt. You can pause in those moments of delay and whisper to yourself, I'm not broken. I'm protecting myself, and I'm ready to heal. That single act of self-recognition can turn shame into courage, paralysis into possibility. Think about it. How different would your life look if, instead of attacking yourself every time you postponed something, you asked, what am I afraid of? What memory is holding me back? What pain am I still carrying? Those questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awakening. They are the first steps toward reclaiming your life from the grip of old wounds. Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become your true self if you are at war with parts of you that are still hurting. Procrastination, as frustrating as it feels, may be pointing you directly to the places that need healing. And once you bring compassion into those places, procrastination loses its power. It no longer has to protect you. You are free to move, to act, to create. This is why your healing matters. Not just for your deadlines or your productivity, but for your life. For the dreams you've postponed, for the relationships you've delayed, for the version of yourself that has been waiting patiently behind the wall of fear. So here is my invitation to you. The next time you find yourself delaying, stop, breathe. Instead of spiraling into shame, ask yourself, what is this really about? Write it down, speak it out loud, hold it gently, and then take one small step. Not a leap, not a sprint, just one step. Because every small act of courage retrains the body, teaching it that life is not as dangerous as the past once made it seem. And if this message has touched something in you, if you felt seen, if you recognized yourself in these words, then share this video. Not just because it helps this channel, but because there are countless others out there blaming themselves for wounds that were never their fault. Someone you know is drowning in shame, convinced they're lazy, when in truth they are simply surviving. By sharing this, you might give them the mirror they've been waiting for. Subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell, not as an act of empty routine, but as a commitment to yourself. A commitment to keep bringing light into the dark corners of your mind. A commitment to keep choosing healing over shame. Because this journey is not a one-time revelation, it is a practice. And every new insight, every new perspective, is a step closer to freedom. Remember, procrastination is not the end of your story. It is a chapter that has been asking to be read with compassion. And now that you understand its true meaning, you hold the power to write the next chapter differently. One of courage, one of healing, one of becoming. So the next time that familiar voice whispers, "You're lazy," silence it with the truth. I am not lazy. I am healing. I am alive, and I am moving forward. Because once you see procrastination for what it truly is, you'll never look at yourself the same way again.